What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be featuring Endymion with a bit of a twist in Runick, as we newly got Servant off the list just recently, but I'll get more into the variant I'm choosing to make in this video as the video goes on, and I'll leave most of it for the deck profile. But before I begin, if you could happen to click on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons, it would be greatly appreciated, as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. It would also be really helpful if you could click on those notification bells, as they notify you when I upload on the channel. So there will be a couple of replays that you see here, including this first one that you can do in regular Endymion. And we're going to start here by activating the Servant and then activating the Mastery, and this will get us a total of 2 counters on it, along with the ability to get another Endymion card, as this time around we're going to get a second copy of Servant because we can do that now, and we're going to get the 2 counters on the Servant on the scale, as we're now going to activate the second copy of Servant on its scale, and then we can activate the Servant that was already on the scale, and this will give us access to 2 monsters as we bring out the Endymion and the Servant. And then from here we'll get a pair of counters on them via the Servant, and from here we can now link away into our Beyond the Pendulum. So very easy access into Beyond the Pendulum here, as we're going to get a search. And one cool thing here that you can do with just these 2 cards is also get yourself an extra body along with a high scale in the form of Chronograph, as we're going to activate it, and this will allow us to special summon back out our Endymion, as we can't special summon the Servant. You have to remember that you can only special summon this once per turn, but we're also locked under a 3 scale, and we would need a 2 scale to bring it out if it didn't have that restriction. But from here we're going to activate the Chronograph, as we're going to use its effect now, bringing our Time Gazer Magician on board, as we're going to now link away into an Appaloosa. And I know it doesn't look like a lot, but you have to remember these cards were designed in 2018. We don't have a Valence Shinohime or a Valence activation that are literally 1-card combos, but I don't think that that necessarily changes too much how powerful this deck can be, as you'll see momentarily. So this second combo here, and we'll start with the Servant along with the Mastery again, with the Abductor this time around, as we're going to start by activating the Servant. From here we can activate the Abductor, we'll then activate the Mastery, as this is going to get us 2 counters on the Servant, one for the activation of Mastery and the other from Mastery. So we'll now have 3 counters on Servant this time around, because we actually had Abductor on the scale, which gave it another counter, and this will allow us to get us our 2 bodies on board with the Endymion and the Servant as we place the counters on them. And then we also can go into our Beyond the Pendulum to get us a second Pendulum monster here, and this will enable what we can do in terms of how much we Pendulum summon, and even getting the extra body on board via the Chronograph Sorcerer. Now you will lose your counters because Beyond the Pendulum negates the Abductor, but you'll see that it's not going to matter too much here, as we're going to be able to special summon or Pendulum summon out our 2 copies of Endymions, and then we can activate the Chronograph, which will allow us to bring out the Time Gazer, go into our Odd Eyes Absolute, and now we can go into Appaloosa, and this will give us 3 monster negations via the Appaloosa, along with the Odd Eyes Vortex for the Omni Negate, while having cards already face up in the extra deck for that Omni. Now we'll finally get into how the Endymion and the Runick stuff works together, especially with the fact Servant is at 3 now. So we'll start here by activating the Servant, then we can activate our tip, as we're going to get ourselves the search for a Runick card, as we're going to get the Runick Fountain, as we don't want to discard in this specific hand, and you'll see why momentarily, as we get the Banish off the tip, and we also get the ability to get 3 counters on the Servant via the Fountain, and being able to bring out an extra deck monster through your last Runick quick play. So we're going to get the Huggins here, and from here we're going to use the Fountain, which will get us into a couple of draws here, and what you draw can definitely change what you do. But I still do want to show how to play this out, so we're going to activate the Servant now, and this will bring us out the Endymion. From here we can place the counters on them, and then we'll be able to link into our Beyond the Pendulum. We're going to link the Endymion because you want to be able to pendulum summon it back. But from here we're going to add a copy of Flexion, as we're going to activate our scales here as we activate the Abductor along with the other level 3 Endymion, but we're now going to pendulum summon here and bring out our Reflection along with the Endymion, which will give us 2 level 7s, and now we can go into our Odd Eyes Absolute, we can link away into our Appaloosa, giving us the 3 monster negates along with the Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon that you get from Absolute Dragon, and any possible other cards in hand, as you still do have your Runick Fountain face up on the field. This Vortex Negate is also live. So this is another combo hand I would like to say to take a grain of salt with, as this is just showing the Runick side of it and how you can stumble into your combos, sort of like how you were with the original version of Endymions, where you just play a bunch of draw cards. Runicks kind of have the same functionality there, as you're able to get the Fountain, and stuff like Tip and Slumber are easily activatable. But one thing that I do like about the Runick engine in this particular type of deck is the fact that you're able to back up your negations with stuff like Brilliant Flames or Freezing Curse. And I bring Brilliant Flame because Kashtira will be a popular deck this format, and being able to pop their Kashtiras in a possible grind game state can end up being really important, as you can just take away their ability to search for their follow-up and kind of win from there. And you can argue about not having your next battle phase, but I did do something for that, as I'm going to stop talking here, and we're going to activate the Fountain now, which will return our 3 Runick quick plays into our deck so that we can draw 3 as we get the Abductor. And again, whatever you get determines on what you get, but in this case scenario we're going to get a similar combo to one of the previous ones, as we have the Abductor and the Mastery, but this time the Runick Fountain is basically any spell, as you really just want to get the counters on Abductor. As we're going to activate the Mastery, this will bring us our Endymion to our hand, and then from here we can activate the Abductor, which will net us a search as we get the Chronograph, and then we're going to use the Chronograph in order to place another counter on Abductor, but we'll also be able to get a body on board with the Time Gazer through the Chronograph, as we're going to link away into our Beyond the Pendulum, and then from here we can get ourselves a search as we get the Kendo Spirit. And this is a tech that I decided to put into the deck because Abductor and Servant are going to be very important in how consistently you can do stuff, and being able to get multiple counters on it via it returning to hand once you've already activated it and then pendulum summoned, and then being able to activate it again to get counters on either Abductor or Servant felt like an interesting enough reason to put it in here. It's also a scale 9, so it allows you to pendulum summon stuff out like Endymion. But from here we're going to place the Kendo Spirit on board now, as we're going to pendulum summon, and we're going to bring out our Chronograph and our Endymion, and you'll see that we won't be able to make any Exceed plays in this particular hand as we get the Kendo Spirit back. But what I do want to show is that you can still end up making an Indestructible Avramax, in particular hands like this where you may not have enough gas, and I think that it's an interesting option considering that all the Kashtira stuff banishes. They won't be able to beat over this. All the Kashtira stuff targets. Mirror Jade is kind of a big counter to this card, which is also important to note. But even looking at the opposing Runick cards, there's just a lot of matchups that this can work against, with stuff that plays Mirror Jade excluded. So now we're going to notch up the combos a little bit, as we have 3 of our main power cards, I would like to say, with Abductor, Mastery, and the Tip. And the Tip being able to be a way to stack counters through the search of a Runick card, bring you out a body so that you can keep pendulum summoning. It just does a lot. So we'll start this hand here by activating the Abductor. From here we can activate the Mastery, and this will get us a search for the Servant, as we're going to place a second counter on Abductor, and then we'll activate the Servant here as we're going to get the final counter that we need on Abductor, and this will net us a search as we're going to get the Endymion, and then we'll activate the Tip as we're going to get another Runick card here as we get the Freezing Curse this time around. put some counters on as we're going to activate the Freezing Curse in order to get a body this time around as we get the Huggin, and this will give us our third counter on Servant. And from here we're going to use the Huggins effect, and we're going to get the Fountain here as we want to continue to put counters on the Servant so that we can use its effect, as we're going to now get the effect of the Servant so that we can special summon it out and bring our Endymion to our board as well. From here, we'll be able to link away into our Beyond the Pendulum, much like we have previously, as we're going to get our search for the chronograph. And then from here, we'll be able to activate the chronograph. We can then pendulum summon back out the Endymion, as we're now going to use the chronograph effect. This will bring out the Time Gazer, and this is just a combo that ends you on your Appaloosa along with your Endymion, as something as you can do when Abductor is the main enabler of your hands. So now this is a 3.5 card combo with an asterisk, and that asterisk is this can be any Runick quick play, and this can be any monster that you can pendulum summon. The other two cards that you'll need is the Servant along with the Mastery. And we're going to start this hand here by activating the Servant, then we can activate the Mastery. From here we'll be able to get ourselves the second copy of Servant, which feels really nice to do, as we're going to get more counters on the Servant, then activate the tip for its third counter, as we're going to bring out the Fairy this time around, as we're going to now use the effect of the Endymion or the Servant, as we're going to bring out the Abductor, and we're doing this because it's a level 4, and you'll see what I have planned here with the Exceed summon of Granite Gallant, and this is going to get us our Fossil Dyna, and this is how I planned on playing around the no battle phase with the fact that we play the Runick cards. It doesn't really matter if we don't have a battle phase if our opponent can't play either, and you also have to consider that something like Flu is a lot more out of the format, so you put your opponent on draw the out or have a specific deck. So from here we'll be able to link away the Granite along with our Servant for the Beyond the Pendulum, as we're going to get us ourselves search here, and then we'll be able to activate the Servant, then activate the Chronograph, as this will get us our skills as we need them in order to bring out any monster that you can pendulum summon with the ability to use the effect of Chronograph, as we're going to get the Time Gazer. From here we'll be able to go into our Appaloosa, summon the Fossil Dyna, and this will give us 3 monster negations along with a special summon lock. So now I'm going to go over some full hands here, and I'm going to start off with an awkward hand where we won't actually be searching the Chronograph off of the Beyond the Pendulum, and we'll have to activate it much earlier. We also have 2 cards in Endymion and the Book of Eclipse, which don't do anything for you unless you have other stuff to work with it, outside of the Book of Eclipse, which is just something that you set. But then you also have the Magician's Souls, which also isn't necessarily a combo starter, it's just an extender. So to start this hand, we'll activate our Abductor, as we'll be able to then activate our Chronograph, and from here we can use the Chronograph effect, and this will allow us to get a body on board, as from here we can now use the Soul's effect. We'll send an Illusion of Chaos to the graveyard in order to special summon it, and this will be how we get into our Beyond the Pendulum, as we can now use its effect in order to net us a search, and we'll get the Kendo Spirit this time around, as you want to be able to get more counters later on throughout the game. But again, it's a scale 9, as we're going to be able to pendulum summon now, and we're going to bring out the Endymion and the Chronograph, and from here you'll have options. You can make a Masquerena and end on that. You can go straight into Appaloosa, or for the sake of this video, I'm just going to go into Avramax after going into the IP, and this will give us an indestructible Avramax that your opponent obviously can't target either, along with the Book of Eclipse and an extra counter for your Abductor in the next turn, the Kendo Spirit, along with whatever else you have in hand. Now this will be one of your stronger hands, as we do have Abductor along with the Tip and the Mastery. We even have the Upstart Goblin, which is just a free counter. The way that we'll play this hand is that we'll activate the Abductor, and then from here we can use the Upstart, which will get us into a draw, and this will get us a Servant, as we're now going to be able to activate the Servant Servant, and then from here we can activate the Mastery, which will put 2 counters on Servant, and this will efficiently put us at 3 for both, as we also have the tip, but we already have 3 for the Abductor, and we're going to get the search for a second copy of Endymion here, as we're now going to activate the tip. We can then special summon out a level 4 here, as we're going to go into Gary, and then from here we're going to use the effect of the Servant of Endymion here, and this will get us a couple of bodies as we get the Servant along with the Abductor, and from here we're going to be able to go into our Gallant Granite. This is another Fossil Dyna hand, of course, and we'll be able to search that, as we're now going to link away into Beyond the Pendulum. Beyond the Pendulum will get us a scale 8, as we're going to get the Chronograph, and then from here we can activate the Chronograph and Pendulum Summon as we summon the 2 copies of Endymion. Then we'll make the Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, use the effect of Chronograph here, as we're going to special summon out the Time Gazer, and then from here we're going to go into our Appaloosa, trigger our Odd Eyes Absolute in the graveyard that will bring out the Vortex with a live negation, but then we also have the ability to normal summon the Fossil Dyna in order to put opponents under a special summon lock, which even Book of Eclipse can't out, and your opponent won't be able to use something like Lava Golem. Fear Mode technically just spurns this entire board, but it's one of the least common used ones, so that is kind of nice, but more importantly, you will have the negation via the Vortex or stuff like Book of Eclipse. So now this will be the final hand, and again, I know that you've seen Servant in like almost all of these, but it's because, as stated earlier, I wanted to get this on the video as much as possible to show you how to play with it post-ban list and in a build like this with the Runick cards. From here we're going to activate our Servant of Endymion, as we're going to activate our Storm now, and this will get us a body as we're going to get the Huggin, and the Huggin will be able to pitch a card here as we're going to get ourselves the Fountain, and we also have Golden Droplets in hand, which will allow us to just activate it freely, as this will be able to give our opponent a draw, get some banishes, as we'll also be able to trigger the field spell now, as this will be able to draw us 3. And from here it depends on what you draw, of course, but you'll see that we do get the Fossil Dino, which is kind of nice, as we're going to use the Servant in order to bring itself out along with the extra body in Endymion. We don't have to go for a level 4 there because we don't need the Gallant Granite, as you see the Fossil Dino in hand, but we're going to get the Beyond the Pendulum for the Chronograph, and then we're going to activate the Reflector along with the Chronograph in order to get our scales for the Pendulum Summon coming up. And you don't want to Pendulum Summon your Fossil Dyna here, you'll be able to normal summon that easily, as we also have the Slumber in hand. We're going to go into our Absolute Dragon, as now we can use the effect of Chronograph, which will net us another search, and from here we're going to Pendulum Summon into a 4-material Appaloosa with the trigger of the Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, and then we'll also be able to cap off the board with the Fossil Dyna normal summon, lock our opponent out of special summoning, along with anything else that you may have in hand. You can keep in mind, this Slumber can also be something like one of your multiple Runicks, Freezing Curse, or Brilliant Flames. You already have the Fountain on board. So finally, with all the replays out of the way, I take you onto the deck profile, and I feel I went over almost everything through the combos in this deck profile, so I won't do much explaining for the main deck. I do want to talk about some of the options here, as Access Code and Rotten are definitely options that you have. Rotten being able to be link summoned via a Beyond the Pendulum and literally any other spellcaster is a nice way to special summon out your Fossil Dyna, but it also involves going into Gallant Granite, and as you see through this deck list, most consistent ways to get into your 4s is when you have a line that would special summon out the Gary, along with either seeing the Servant that can bring it out, or the Abductor itself. There's also always scenarios where you can hard draw the Fossil Dyna. Realistically, you're just not going to normal summon much. I like Avermax over the Access Code here because it is a turn 1 thing that you can make, and also does hit some of the good decks in this format that can really struggle with it. And of course there's the variants, and you have the Pendulum Magician and Mythical Beast stuff that you can play. You can even throw in a copy of Jackal King into this if you want to be able to give it some counters, and play around something like Nibiru, which in that case maybe you would take out the Kendo Spirit for it. That definitely requires more testing. I'll have Astrograph in the main deck because as you see, we're not really doing our own scales like that. But I don't think that it's wise to just put Astrograph in any Pendulum deck. Beatrice is also something interesting. There are some hands where you can get out multiple Chronographs, which would be a rank 6. It would also involve playing extra cards in deck that I wasn't sure that I wanted to do. It's something that I still felt was worth adding in. And the Abyss Dweller is just another level 4 that you can make. I think that Baguska will be better this format if the top decks are Kashtira and Despia. But those are just some of my thoughts. The Beast can kind of be a problem to this, but you do have the Runick engine in order to search yourself the copy of Destruction. And Freki is another option that you have here. It's just an easy big body that you can summon, potentially get over something that you may need to. I didn't want to heavily commit into the Runick cards in the extra deck in order to be able to play the deck to its full capacity, having to adjust the lines and make the deck feel less natural, if you know what I mean. And we have the rest of the cards here, which are basically side deck options, and something that is cool about this deck is just how easy it is to side deck. Tasking is basically another spell that you can activate going second, which can get you into your talents. You don't want to play evenly because of the Runick cards. Thrust along with talents and Book of Eclipse can be just as good, especially when you can search board breakers like Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster. You saw we really don't normal summon in this deck, so Sphere Mode and Lava Golem, great cards that you can put in going second. Nibiru can also be that great asset going second against a deck like Kashtira. Will also allow you to have an extra body on board. I would also like to add, before going into the card by card, something else that I liked about the Runick edition with the Servant is that when you activate one Runick card and still have another in hand, way you're able to cycle into your field spell, just add repeated counters as you'll have multiple spells to activate. The Runick engine is just something that's kind of nice. You do need a discard in order to get the fountain along with another spell card. Just the added ratios of being able to play a total of 12 Runick quick play spells with 5 that you can activate at any point in time. The Storm is also an easy special summon from the extra deck. It's just their abilities to get you into more bodies as well as Chronograph is. There's also another reason why we do the 1 Souls package and the 1 Illusion of Chaos. I don't think that you need to overcommit to this engine, but it's just nice to have. The very last thing I would like to mention is Brilliant Flames and Freezing Curse. I do think that there's an argument to do 2 Freezing Curse and 3 Brilliant Flames, because a Freezing Curse can just negate the Arise Heart. Brilliant Flames can just outright out it. You can save yourself a problem like that. Again, that's just up to testing how the format develops. With all of that out of the way, I'll finally get into the card by card. Copy of Magister, 3 copies of Servant, copies of Freezing Curse, the 3 copies of Eclipse, the 1 copy of Upstart, the 3 Abductor, the 3 Brilliant Flames, the 3 Endymions, the 2 Fountains here, the Mastery, the Slumber, the Golden Droplets, which could be a 2nd copy of Slumber, the 1 copy of Storm, the Fossil Dyna, the Kendo Spirit, which can be the Jackal, Reflector, 3 copies of Tip, Chronograph, Gazer, Magician's Souls, and Illusion of Chaos to round out the main deck. For the extra deck, we have Avramax, Appaloosa, Unicorn, Selene, 2 copies of Beyond the Pendulum, Scarena, Gallant Granite, Baguska, Odd-Eyes Absolute Dragon, Odd-Eyes Vortex Dragon, Gary, Unin, and the Huggins to round out the extra deck. Anyways, if you made it this far into the video, I thank you so much for watching and I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.